think we like to be dependable. I think we like to be in control. I think we like for people to look at us and think like he or she can handle a lot. They're doing a lot. They're high capacity. I think we esteem those things. And I think ultimately that question, well, while it seems kind of light, is really the root of why a lot of us are living exhausted.
Our guest today is Jess Connolly. She's written the book that I believe we all need, Tired of Being Tired. Receive God's realistic rest for your soul deep exhaustion. After developing chronic panic attacks and battling anxiety and an autoimmune disease, Jess realized there had to be more for women of faith. She dug into the Word of God, researched and searched for a realistic approach to rest that women could tailor to their individual lifestyles and needs. So, are you a rest avoider like me? This episode is for you and for me. So, Jess, welcome to Kankel, Fritz and Friends, the podcast. We're so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you guys.
Well, tell us just a little bit about you. I mentioned a few things there in the intro, but tell us what life is like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm a mom of 4. I have 3 teenagers and a tweenager. My husband and I lead our church, Bright City Church, that we planted 10 years ago. I also run an organization called Go and Tell Gals, where we coach women in their calling, and I'm an author and a speaker. So I'm sometimes on the road doing those things and traveling to teach. And in general, we live a pretty full life. And I say that for one reason and one reason only, and that's to kind of level the playing field, because a lot of people that I knew in the past who talked about rest seem to live very quiet and gentle lives. And I, in fact, do not. And so for the women or the men out there listening who would be like, must be nice. That's not how my life is. I would say, same, me too. My life is not quiet or sweet or gentle or even all that tidy.
I think that you portray it pretty well. When we greet each other, it seems like it's like, hi, how are you? And the answer is almost always, I'm just so busy. I'm so busy and I'm so tired. It's just seems universal, or maybe it's just me, but I doubt it. Every woman I know feels like is tired. And why is it that we kind of wear that as a badge of honor? I'm just so tired, just like it's so unique. And yet I don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't think it's just you. First of all, I like to say I often hear the busy, tired, but good. People say, how are you? I'm good. I'm busy. I'm busy, tired, but good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it just
There's
is the
always
refrain we repeat. You've asked a really great question. And unfortunately, I think the honest answer is a little bit deep and a little bit raw. But the truth is this, I think the reason why we've grown accustomed to it is because pride. We're really proud of being people who can handle a lot. And I don't think one generation or 2 generations started this campaign. I think this has been a problem for a very, very, very long time. But there are a lot of deeper answers kind of tied up in this answer. I think we like to be dependable. I think we like to be in control. I think we like for people to look at us and think like he or she can handle a lot. They're doing a lot. They're high capacity. I think we esteem those things. And I think ultimately that question, while it seems kind of light, is really the root of why a lot of us are living exhausted.
Yeah. Well, and it's one thing to live our lives exhausted, but you actually took it upon yourself to put it into words and create this book, Tired of Being Tired. So what's the story that pushed you to actually sit down and write this?
Yeah. Well, I had been living the same kind of life I'm living for about 6 years. I had been helping lead our church. Obviously, I'd been parenting at that point for over a decade. I'd been writing books for about a decade. I've been in ministry since I was in my early 20s. So I'd been in ministry for 2 decades. And I had been doing all of these things. And when I saw a new book come out on rest, I would buy it. It didn't matter who wrote it. I would buy it. I wanted to understand, like, how can I not feel so exhausted? And
Yeah.
like I said, I found that a lot of books that I read on rest, maybe I just couldn't relate to the author, or maybe they couldn't relate to me. Or maybe I felt like this just won't work for me. There's something wrong with me in this. Um, and in 2022, I began to have pretty extreme symptoms of a mental, spiritual, physical, emotional breakdown. And they had been
Mm.
brewing for really, honestly, I think 2 decades. They had been brewing for quite a while. And a lot of them, similar to what we just talked about, a lot of them I kind of felt proud of. Like I thought being able to push through some of these symptoms meant that I was high capacity. For example, I wasn't a great sleeper. I seemed to have a hard time going to sleep, a hard time staying asleep. And so I would often, when I just couldn't sleep anymore at 4 or 5 a.m., I would just get up and start working, or I'd get up and spend time with the Lord. And I thought, like, this is what, holy, righteous, hardworking women do. We just get up and get started when we can't sleep anymore. And for example, I didn't realize that one symptom of not being able to sleep, of experiencing insomnia, actually had a lot to do with the fatigue that was plaguing me during the day,
Mm.
the mental and emotional and spiritual fatigue that I was dealing with during the day. And so everything in my life just kind of started to break. Mentally, I did not feel well. I did not feel whole. I did not feel awake.
Mm.
Spiritually, I felt really overburdened and exhausted. I was feeling really bitter with God and the people of God. Emotionally, I would just vacillate wildly from, like, not being able to access emotion, not being able to cry, which I was also very proud of. Like, oh, I'm not a big crier. I'm pretty strong. I'm stoic. And then swinging wildly to, like, I don't know why I'm crying. I would have what I called tired tears, and I would just say, like, I don't know, I'm just tired. I'm just tired. And physically, I just wasn't doing great. I had an autoimmune disease that I had been able to keep in remission for a while, and I was no longer keeping that at bay. I was experiencing insomnia, just a variety of different issues. And so, all that being said, I was also slated to write another book. I'm an author. I put
Mm.
out a book every year, a book every 2 years, and I was supposed to go and speak with my publisher about what this next book was going to be. And I called them before the meeting and I said, "You don't want me to come. You did. I am not the one right now. Like, I am a whole mess. You don't want me coming into that office." And they were like, "Well, listen, hey, we can push the book. You need to take care of yourself, but why don't you come in and just talk to us about what you're dealing with and what you're feeling? And we want to be on your team." It was just a really gracious thing to do. And when we got in that room, I kind of just started to ask them some questions. And I said, if I feel this way and every other woman I know feels this way, but
Mm.
Jesus has said in Matthew 11, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." Like, why isn't that working for us? Where is the
Oh.
disconnect? And I just told him, I said, I've staked my entire life on God being real. My entire life is based on this hope of the gospel. But he seems to talk about rest in a way that I do not experience. So what is not working? And
Mm.
my publisher said, "Listen, you're released from writing a book right now. Don't worry about it. But if you want to dig into this and try to figure it out, I think there would be people who would be happy to hear your thoughts." And so I decided to use my own life as an experiment, and I just took this invitation as from Matthew 11, where he says, "Come to me, and I will show you rhythms of grace. I will show you a better way." And I said, "Okay, if he says this, let me try and figure out what that looks like." And that's how Tired of Being Tired came to be.
I like
Wow.
that.
We
Yeah.
need that, right?
Right? I think there's this common problem of, especially with women. I mean, obviously men too, but we will not give ourselves permission to rest. And I know that this is something that I would say it's only been in the last 5 to 6 years that I've even learned how to just not do a whole lot on vacation. I remember there was one year in my 20s, I was going on vacation with my family. We were going to go to the hill country and like tube down the river, and we had a cabin. And one of my friends is like, well, you know, what all are you going to do? And I had this huge stack of books. It was 4 books. And I'm not talking like light beach reads. Like one of them was the unabridged works of Sylvia Plath. And I said, well, I have to get through all of these. And he goes, you're going on vacation and you have to get through. Why? And I was like, well, I'm not contributing at work. I need to do something on vacation. And he was like, okay, I don't think you know the meaning of the word. Oh, no. And really, it's just been the last few years. And I think, honestly, exhaustion drove me to like shut down on vacation and take that rest that I needed. But for the longest time, I just wouldn't even allow myself to rest. And I know other people who are like that too. Like, what's wrong with us?
Yeah, it's real. It's real. I actually just told somebody a story today about the season where I was learning how to rest and learning what that looked like for me, because it looks like different things for all of us. And I went on vacation to a place where there was no internet, and there were not a lot of other people. And so I started collecting shells and then categorizing my shells based on what time of day I got them, photographing them so that I would know what time of day I got them, and then and categorizing them in little baggies. And that's when I thought, like, man, I think I might need to figure out what rest looks like for me, because becoming a really intense shell collector is not it. This is not God's best for me.
That is so funny.
Man, you've delved into the the exhaustion, the different types of exhaustion that you experienced, also the different types of rest. I was hoping you would to go back into that a little bit, spiritual, physical, mental, and emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so the truth is, another reason why a lot of us are just tired and staying tired is because we don't know what kind of tired we are. So we're resting the way other people rest, we're resting the way we think we should rest, or we're only maybe just thinking about our physical exhaustion. But there are 4 main types that I look at in tired of being tired, and those are spiritual, actually starting with spiritual exhaustion, then physical, then mental, and then emotional. And so a huge part of experiencing realistic rest is, number one, figuring out which one is plaguing you in which season, because it's going to be different for all of us in different seasons of our life. And then resting at the area of that fatigue, and not necessarily kind of like this blanket rest. And I mean, speaking of vacation, this is why people say, they come home from vacation and say, I need a vacation for my vacation. And that isn't just because like the vacation was bad. It was because we might have been resting in a way that wasn't actually applicable for us. This is why some of us feel like more doom after a weekend than we even feel relief or rest or lightness. And so, yeah, identifying which one and which season is very important for each of us.
Mm. I know that I oftentimes confuse resting with being lazy. And I know other people do too. Like, why is that something that we think, and how on earth do we determine which one we like? Are we just needing rest, or are we being lazy?
Yeah. Well, here's the good news. I mean, I love that you asked this question. And I think, like, why do we worry about rest being lazy? Well, because we've seen people be lazy. We've seen ourselves be lazy, and we want to avoid that, which is good and godly and beautiful. But kind of getting more at the heart of the issue. So I often say, with all of my books, most of us want relief in an area. That's why we're going to pick up a book. We're like, I want to see some life change in this area. But to do that, we usually have to change our behavior. But to really change our behavior and experience lasting relief and change, we need to change our beliefs. We need to change what we think. And so really, Tired of Being Tired is this very practical book where I'm handing out all these tips, but it's also a theology book about a theology of rest, looking from Genesis to Revelation about what God says about how he's made us, how he's made our bodies, what he offers to us, what real rest looks like. And so the truth is, I think that when we turn our eyes to truth, to God's truth about what rest is and why he offers it, and why it's good for us, knowing kind of that truth will help us turn from this counterfeit of laziness or believing lies about it like that. And then lastly, the only other thing I'll say about the connection between laziness and rest is someone asked me early in the book publishing process, and they said, like, are you worried that people are going to read it and just be lazy? You know, are you worried they're going to, like, I've had actually bosses say, like, I would love for the people in my church to read this, or I'd love for the people on my team to read this, but I don't want them to stop showing up. Like, I don't want them to get lazy. And the
Mm,
truth is, true kingdom rest does not make us more lazy. It makes us more empowered and energized and awake for what God's called us to. And I never worry about someone running towards true kingdom, biblical rest for their bodies, their souls, their minds, their emotions, and not wanting to move or to live or to serve or to run on mission after they experience that rest. They're always going to want to, because true rest is going to just absolutely refresh us in a real, eternal, and spiritual way.
mm,
Love that. And as I'm thinking about rest and the importance of it, I think it's equally maybe as important is to identify what it is that is exhausting us. Because if I don't know what it is that's dragging, my energy down, then I probably will fall into that. Oh, I'm just lazy, needing to apologize for taking a rest. And so, how do we do that? Identify our source of exhaustion.
Yeah. I mean, I often encourage women. First of all, there's a quiz in the book. Chapter 4 gives a nice little quiz. It's
Uh-huh.
really life-giving. I give it to my friends. I give it to my husband all the time. I've given it to friends multiple times and said, like, okay, your life has changed a little bit. Let's revisit this. Let's talk about it again. But that being said, if they don't have the book, or if maybe even taking the quiz sounds exhausting, I would say pay attention to the places where you hit your point of extreme fatigue. When you hit that point of, like, I cannot keep going, this is not working. Pay attention to what happened just before that. Pay attention to the moments where you break down in tears at fatigue, or when you give up and you cancel everything for the weekend. What happened just before that? Because something in there is wrapped up in what is leading you to feel as tired as you are. And then the other thing is actually a really positive question. I love to just ask people, what do you think, like, you living fully awake would look like? What do you think you rested would look like? And a lot of times,
Uh-huh.
as people describe that, as they describe that vision for their life, then they realize what the gap is and what's actually missing.
Mm. I love that. I'm looking at your quiz right now. Where are you most fatigued? And I'm like, ooh, I think I need to go through these questions. Something like, if I could fix one thing, it would be, and you give me some things. So I don't even have to exhaust myself thinking of options. I find myself wishing I was able to, I love that invitation to dream a little. So that quiz that you mentioned, I can tell already, it's powerful in helping to identify what it is that is exhausting us. I think that's
Mhm.
really interesting, because I hadn't thought about it until I picked up your book, and I was like, oh, I just had thought I'm so tired, but I haven't tried to identify what's causing that tiredness.
Yeah, it's real. It's a really helpful tool.
So, spiritual exhaustion. That's kind of a scary one that I want to think, I can't be spiritually exhausted because it's not very spiritual of me. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Oh no, I think I want to speak truth to that right away.
Yeah.
I think spiritual exhaustion means you've been using that muscle. We've been using that muscle. We've been, striving in the most beautiful way to connect with God, to
Mm,
connect with others, to use our God-given gifts. But that being said, spiritual exhaustion is so prevalent and so common because no one is really saying, like, how are you resting your spirit? Or how are you believing in God's strength in your walk with the Lord, or in the way that you live out your spiritual life, rather than maybe trying to get closer to Him? And I will say this is where some of the this is where some of the belief shifting besides even behavior shifting, really absolutely changes everything. I think it changes the way we pray. I think it changes the way we show up to our spiritual disciplines. I think it changes the way we show up to church. It changes the way we show up for other people. And the outside of our life might not look that different. Our behaviors actually might stay very similar in this, but I think our motivations will shift a good bit.
That's good. Now, we talked about laziness earlier and that common confusion. And then I think there's an area where it's not, we wouldn't even go, we're going to be lazy, but it's like, how do I get the rest that I need without neglecting my responsibilities, without slacking on any of my goals, which is a very different thing than just being intentionally lazy. But it's like stuff still has to get done. How do I do all that and rest at the same time?
Yeah. Okay, well, here's the hard news. And I get it. And again, that's why when I gave my little bio, I said, I'm not a woman who doesn't have a lot on her plate. After writing Tired of Being Tired, after living out, I still had to show up. I still had to do my job. I still had to lead my church. I still had to love my kids. I still have to do all those things. I didn't get to say oh, now I'm a rest girl, so I'm going to resign from everything. But that being said, here's the hard news. I think for a lot of us in 2024, a lot of what is on our plate is what we think we should do and not necessarily what we have to do. And a lot of what is exhausting us is what we think culturally we should do. It's not necessarily all that necessary. And what's more, we've kind of tricked our brains into thinking now, if I don't do this, if I don't do 100%, if I don't do 120%, I'm lazy, or there's something wrong with me. And again, that's where this goes a good bit back to reorienting our beliefs. I was actually just talking to someone earlier. I'll use this really practical example. I was talking to someone earlier about rest and about the rest in their life. And I was talking about, one thing that's really interesting about physical exhaustion that I learned. She was like, give me some practical tips to fight physical exhaustion. And I said, something that's just a novel idea that I learned through research is you can actually leave dishes in your sink and you can leave clothes in your laundry basket. So both of those are receptacles that actually can't be filled. And she was like, oh, I know. But she said, I can never rest if the dishes aren't done. She was like, so it's just actually just easier for me to do it. And I said, listen, I'm not fighting you on the dishes. Doing the dishes is actually sometimes restful for me because it's mental rest of getting a task done that I can actually complete, because so much of my life I can't complete. But that being said, I do want to poke a hole in this idea that you said, I can't rest if the dishes aren't done. And say, where did that belief come from? What is the lie you're believing about yourself if you walk by and there's 4 dishes in the sink? What happens if you leave it for a whole day? What happens if you leave it for 2 days? What is actually wrong with you? And what's actually wrong with all of us if we use a receptacle that's meant to hold something while we take our time getting what we need in other areas of our life. So that's just a small example with the dishes. And I get you can't leave your dishes for a week. You probably can't even leave them for more than 2 days, or if you're like me, you'll get flies. But starting to pay attention to our lives and saying okay, what am I believing that rest is not for me, that it's not going to work for me because I have all of these things that I need to get done? But how many of those things did God actually ask us to do? How many of them are we actually called to do? How many of them are actually about us and about how other people perceive us and the image we want to present to the world? And maybe is there actually a lot of room for rest on the table if we take it?
I feel a little attacked. In a good way.
I'm talking to me too all the time.
Let's delve into physical rest for a minute, which I think is, probably the most obvious when you think about exhaustion and the need to rest. And I'm really grateful for. They've done a lot of studies, obviously, in the last few years about how a lack of rest really starts to impact your physical health in ways that maybe you wouldn't even think that it would. If we don't take a break, our bodies are going to make us at some point. So what are the, let's delve into the repercussions of ignoring that physical rest that we have to have at some points.
Yeah. It's funny, while I was writing the book, I did something different with this book, and I had 70 women read the book live while I was writing it and give
Mm.
me feedback. And it was really helpful and also, really humbling, but it was great because I wanted the book to be applicable for as many women as possible in different seasons. And I wrote a chapter in the book called It Will Get Worse If It Doesn't Get Better. And one of the women who was reading the book sent me an email and she said, like, I don't like, that's not a very positive statement. I don't like, and is it true? Like, will it really get worse if it doesn't get better? And I really thought about her answer and I went back to my research and I like genuinely prayed about it. And I went back to her and I said, um, yeah, it will. Like it will get worse if it doesn't get better. Our bodies are finite and they have boundaries and borders. And I think a lot of us, especially in the Western world, want to believe that we can push our bodies continually past their limitations and their needs. But we're not loving ourselves well. We're not loving other people well by doing that. Like we're basically really complex houseplants, and we need water, and we need sunlight, and we need food, and we need rest. And so I think that we could kind of keep running with our eyes closed and pretending like pain is not coming for us or sickness is not coming for us, or maybe even pretending like we're not even like sick right now. But the truth is, we do have these bodies to steward, and we do have these lives to steward. And so more than I even like to talk about the negative, I don't like to be a bad news girl. I like to be a good news girl. And so when people are kind of pressing me on this idea of like, really, will it really get worse? Like, will I start to have autoimmune diseases? Will I start to have this? Will my body break down in this way? More than I want to like get in their face and say like, yes, it's going to be awful. What I really like to say is like, wouldn't you love to just feel fully present? Wouldn't you love to make it through a holiday and not look back at pictures and think like, man, I barely remembered that because I was so overwhelmed? Or wouldn't you like to wake up and feel mentally clear and awake and ready for what God has for you? Wouldn't you like to feel present in your emotions? Wouldn't you like to go into church and not feel flustered and be like, oh, I got to catch up with so and so, and I didn't get so and so done, and I got to use this time while during the sermon to make my to-do list? Like, wouldn't you just like to feel like you can be awake and alive in your life? And isn't
Oh,
our life worth that? And isn't aren't our souls and our bodies and our minds, aren't they worth that attention and that rest? And more so, even more so, what's at stake if we don't receive God's love in this way? Aren't we missing out on just parts of him and parts of his compassion and his character in the kingdom
Mhm.
by cutting off what he wants to give? Psalm 127 says he gives rest to those he loves. And I think a lot of us are just missing out on it because we're stiff arming him and saying like, I can't, I don't need to. It's not my personality type. I don't want to be lazy.
Yeah, man, I've been there.
God.
I remember I think the first time that I had to just stop and reconsider the way that I was pushing myself. I mean, there was not a single area, mental, spiritual, emotional, I wasn't taking care of anything. And it just so happened that I think my kind of physical breakdown happened right at the end of a job. And I went for the longest stretch I've ever gone being unemployed for 6 months. I think looking back, that was God designed because I remember I was staying with my family, and for like a week, all I could do was just lay on the bed and stare at the ceiling. I couldn't even have a thought. And I, like, looking back, there's no way I would have been able to work. But it was just like my body just went, you got to stop. My mind was like, you got to figure out how to rest. This is what happens when you push yourself too far. You cannot keep going.
Wow.
And I'm sure that we've all had moments like that where you just really have to reassess the way that you're tackling life and how it's not beneficial to you or anybody else. Did you have a moment like that where you were like, man, I gotta reprioritize some stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was kind of what I came to grips with in 2022. I just thought, um, number one, I am not going to be able to keep going. Exactly like you said. I do feel called to all of these things, and I do love my kids and the people that I want to show up for, and my job. I love my work. In fact, a lot of times, like if I describe my work life, I'll tell people I really do feel like I'm living the dream. I feel like I'm living my dream job, the job I've wanted since I was 15 and met Jesus, but it feels like a nightmare.
Mm.
And so I think so many of us really will just kind of hit this point where we say, like, number one, I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to keep going in my life. Number two, if I do keep going, I don't think I'm going to enjoy it. I don't think I'm going to
Ooh.
love it. I don't think I'm going to experience abundance in it. Um, and the good news is we don't all have to hit that point. I mean, we can actually learn from the people around us and say, like, maybe I don't have to hit rock bottom. Like maybe I can actually start to receive what God has for me in the form of rest before I get there.
That's
Wow.
good.
It's powerful stuff. I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling very convicted. I think you can tell that today's conversation is for the woman, you and me, who are ready to break the cycle of exhaustion, find rest for our weary souls. And with biblical truths and practical application, our guest, Jess Connolly, is guiding us to a new rhythm so that we can experience the abundant life God intends for us. Jess, I'm just so appreciating this and just absorbing it. And yet, I think the first thing I do when I feel like I need rest is start to apologize. Like I'll tell my
Mm.
husband, I just need to stop and I'm sorry, but I just need to lay down or I just need to rest for a few minutes. Why do we do that to ourselves? I'm just hearing, Sally, change your ways. Yeah. So how do I stop apologizing for needing to find some peace and some rest?
Yeah. Well, number one, I would say shame off you because you apologize for it because it's cultural. You
Yes.
probably grew up with other people apologizing for needing rest. And so
Mm.
you're really only repeating what we've been taught. And we can use that with compassion, with grace to say, like, and is this what we want to teach? Probably not. We actually would love to be
Mm.
cycle breakers in this way. The great news about even just apologizing, and I love that you asked about this, the great news about apologizing is my favorite thing about words is that they're something we have just massive autonomy and authority over. We can actually control what we say. And so I would say, like, number one, again, going back to say, like, all right, why is the belief there? Why do you feel like you have to apologize for rest? How can we replace that with truth? And then number two, I would say, I think basically all people at all times, but women especially, should be very careful and cautious about any time we say sorry, because the truth for many of us is we apologize for things that are not actually sin. And then we don't have the energy to actually apologize for the things that we've done wrong. So it's a lot more rare for us to actually apologize for something we've done wrong, but we're saying sorry when we walk in the door weird, and we're saying sorry when we need rest, which is a natural process of our body and our soul. Um, or we say sorry when we can't do something, as if that is some sin that we've committed. And then again, yeah, we just don't have the energy to actually say sorry when we have done something wrong, when we have hurt someone or forgotten something. And so I would say just like being very careful about the times you put the word sorry in your mouth. And I have to be so careful and cautious about it now. But using that as an example, one thing I've tried to be even more careful about in the last few years is I never apologize when I say no to someone. So if someone
Mm.
says, like, hey, can you have a coffee date? I really need to meet with you and talk about something. Or, hey, can you get this project done before Friday? Or, hey, can you volunteer for this thing at church? I try to be so careful and cautious to say, thank you so much for the opportunity. I would love to. I'm actually unable to do that. But not putting in the word, I'm sorry there.
Oh.
Because I haven't actually done anything wrong. And this is one way that we kind of perpetuate this narrative for other women feeling like they have to apologize when they just have a natural limitation or boundary or border. I heard somebody say a few years ago, and it's been really transformative for me, that a lot of times when we say sorry, what we need to express is gratitude. So maybe if you have to like stop everything and not make dinner and you need your husband to step in so you can go lie down, a better thing to say rather than like, I'm so sorry, I'm tired, would be to say, thank you so much for supporting me. I'm super grateful. My body needs a little bit of rest. I'm going to go take what I need. Um, and thank you so much. I'm grateful. So even replacing gratitude with an apology when we haven't done something wrong is huge. But the only other thing I'll note on this is I get asked a lot by women one-on-one, by women in interviews, people who have read the book and people who haven't read it yet. A lot of people ask me is like, how do we give women permission to rest? Or like, how do we give ourselves permission to rest? And this concept goes hands in hand with apologizing, right? Because we feel like we need a pass and we feel like we need to like dust it up when we do. And my favorite thing to tell them is this, you don't need permission to rest. And you're not going to get it. And that's why it's actually a great lie that's keeping a lot of us exhausted, because permission is not coming. No one can give you permission to rest. God will not give you permission to rest because he's given you something better, and that's invitation. Even more so, if you want to be serious about it, he's actually made it a commandment. So he's not going to say like, okay, you've done enough. Now you can take a break. He's saying like, I love you. I made you to need rest. I'm not surprised that you need rest. It's not something you need to apologize for. It's not something you need to look at me and make sure I'm not at. I've actually told you to do it because I want you to have it, because I love you and because I know you need it. And so understanding that, again, shifting that belief, like we don't need permission and we certainly don't need to apologize. We already have invitation, which is even better.
Wow. I love that. I even think about the fact that Jesus was sleeping on the boat. You know, I just putting all of that together as you're talking. And how many times have I just entered in with this? I'm so sorry. I'm so tired. And I need to change my ways.
I literally apologized this past weekend for taking a nap.
I did too.
And my
this
husband
weekend.
was like, I don't understand. Why? What? Why are you apologizing for that? I'm like, I don't even know. I know.
Yeah, Misty.
We got to stop that. And you talk about rhythms of rest, which in most of our minds, those words are kind of opposite. Like I don't necessarily think of like rhythm and rest. So delve into that a little bit because I found it really interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You talk about Jesus resting on the boat, and this is like, right, a biblical principle that helps us. I want to hand you another biblical principle that I think was actually really transformative for me. I always, when I start to talk about rest, I take people to Genesis, and everybody's like, we know God rested during creation. I'm like, I'm not even going there. So don't think I'm going there. A beautiful thing that happens in creation is that it says God made the light and he saw that it was good. He made the darkness and he saw that it was good. He made the day and said, this is good. He made the night and said it was good. But then when he sets creation into motion, it says, and then there was evening and there was morning the first day. There was evening and there was morning the first day. So he makes day and then he makes night, but then he switches them and he actually puts night first. And so here in this very moment of creation, we see God saying, like, you actually don't earn your rest. Rest comes first. There was evening and then there was morning. Your day does not start when you wake up. Your day starts when you go to bed. There was evening and then there was morning the first day. And so we kind of see this like beautiful biblical concept right here at the beginning of creation. We don't work, and then rest. We rest and then we work. We work from our rest. We don't rest from our work. Now, that being said, that's why we need rhythms of rest, because a lot of us are very used to work, get to we're finally exhausted, rest a little bit, apologize for it, feel bad for it, and then go again. Whereas if we have rest and rhythms of rest crafted into our life, where we rest maybe before we feel like we've earned it, maybe before we feel like we deserve it, because that moment is probably never coming for most of us. That's why we apologize for it. But if we have rhythms kind of baked into our life already, we'll actually live a more baseline rested life where we can then work to our fullest capacity. But not waiting until we feel like we need rest is huge. It's a little bit like about when you're thirsty, right? They say by the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Whereas if you just continually drink water throughout the day, you don't actually get thirsty. And the same is true with rhythms of rest in our life.
That's good. So we talked about the guilt and the apologies, and, I think it comes from, and we touched on this a little bit, I just want to go back to it momentarily, that deep-rooted belief that our limitations are a liability, that it is a weakness to overcome, when, as you've said, we need to get it through our heads that we were created to rest. We were created with natural limitations. We are not superheroes. We don't get to, we can't keep going. And how do we overcome that thought that this is a weakness when really it's just how we're designed?
Yeah. I mean, this is where, again, understanding truth and having a theology of rest is huge. But looking not only at creation and not only at the character of our Father, but also looking at the life of Jesus, and looking at how, for our good and his glory, he submitted himself to human boundaries and limitations here on earth. He had to eat, he had to sleep. We can very much assume he got sick or he got hurt. And he did that so that he could relate to us, so he could be our great high priest who also comes near to us and has experienced every trial and every pain and every weakness. And yet he was still fully God. And so knowing we're made in his image, and that matters, and that's beautiful, I think can help us remember that these limitations, these boundaries that we have in these earthly bodies, we experience them as weakness, and we experience them as something we'd like to get rid of. But God made us with intention and kindness and truly his glory in his image. And I think in a million different ways, we're not in a space in Western culture in 2024 where we even make allowances for weaknesses, much less celebrate them. But all of Scripture points us to this beautiful truth, specifically found in 2 Corinthians 12:9, where Paul is talking about his own physical weaknesses. And he said, but his power is made perfect in me. His grace is sufficient for me. And so I would even just hand this to anyone who doesn't love their own limitations or their own weaknesses. And I would say, if you want a powerful life, you're going to have to stop pretending that you have weaknesses. You're going to start to have to hold them up to the Lord, to steward them well, to celebrate them. And ultimately, again, most of the New Testament points to that's where the glory comes in. That's where it gets good. That's where the light hits. Not lives made of our own power, our own perfection, our own wisdom. But God uses the weak to shame the wise, or the weak to shame the strong, and the foolish to shame the wise. And so I think if we want a powerful life, we're going to have to acknowledge and celebrate and enjoy to some degree the weak parts of our life.
I should have even, you notice I did it in my question. I used weaknesses super derogatory. So I like the reality of it, that it's okay. We were created that way. And I like the idea of celebrating my weakness, because I have a lot to celebrate.
Me too.
And every woman listening right now as well.
A big party.
I feel so challenged by several things that we've talked about. So I'm going to have to re-listen to this and really absorb it. But one of the biggest things for me to take away, Misty, is my leaning towards apologizing for needing rest, and for recognizing, Jess, that you're encouraging us that God built us for rest. It's a time when we can really stop what we're doing. All the dishes. I'm going to not say, I'm so sorry I'm not doing the dishes. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to go commune with the Lord and feel good about it. And so, wow, I'm just so grateful. I think this is a conversation that whether you're a man or a woman, there's something for you to take away and maybe share with your partner that you're living life with as well. Because, I'm thinking about my husband right now, and he could use a little less apology and a little more rest too, and feel good about it. Yeah. So it might be a marital disease we need to attack. Is this, I'm so sorry, I need to rest kind of idea. Wow.
I'm about to unapologetically nap at my desk.
There you go.
Okay, maybe not that far. I'm kidding.
We'll play this for our
nap
boss
later.
First.
We'll do that. Yes.
Our guest today is Jess Connolly. She wrote the book Tired of Being Tired. Receive God's realistic rest for your soul deep exhaustion. Yes and amen. God has made you for a life of abundance, not a life of exhaustion. It's time to quit the unsustainable pace and receive God's gift of realistic rest. Thank you. Thank you so very much for taking the time out to write this book for us all and help us really re-see how we're spending our days and what we're apologizing for that we should actually celebrate and thank the Lord for. Really appreciate what you did here, Jess.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Where can we find you?
I am Jess A. Connolly on all social media, and my website is jessconnolly.com.
Wonderful. And one more question. What brings you joy?
Oh, I love that. What brings me joy? Oh, right now,
You can say
sunshine.
rest.
I know. I mean, rest does bring me joy. I can't lie. Rest is really helpful. But I would say sitting in the sun, drinking coffee, and spending time with my family.
Yes,
That.
and amen. Love that. Gotta go get me some sunshine.
Yes, and coffee.
We'll join you. Oh, thanks so very much.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.